Hey, leaders, quick question. Do you really need another shiny new program to fix your campus? Yeah, I didn't think so. If you're tired of throwing money at every solution that promises to save tier one, it's time to try something smarter. I've got a free 30-minute training replay where I show you how to give teachers what they actually need without buying another product, adding more staff, or micromanaging the people you already have. In this training, you're going to learn why most new programs don't deliver the impact they promise, the real reason teachers keep asking for more, and how to solve it without spending a dime. And then finally, you'll learn how to strengthen tier one instruction with what you already have on campus. You're also going to get instant access to free resources and a sneak peek at strategies from my book, The Craft of Clarity. So don't hesitate. Grab the free replay and resources at catchingupwithcasey.com/clarity over clutter. Again, that's catchingupwithcasey.com/clarity over clutter. Because listen up, better leadership shouldn't cost you another $50,000 and a 6-hour training nobody wanted. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation. Hey there, welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show. If you are tired of chasing buy-in, frustrated by teams who just can't seem to get on the same page, or over the constant struggle of holding people accountable without feeling like you're micromanaging, this is the show for you. I'm Casey Watts, team leadership expert and the host of this show. I specialize in clarity, collaboration, and character, and I help leaders just like you take teams from chaos to cohesion, from frustration to alignment, so teams can actually work together toward a common purpose instead of against each other as though they are functioning in different organizations. Whether you lead a single team or a team of teams, on this show, we talk about strategies that are going to help you create a culture where accountability and autonomy go hand in hand. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation and learn how to lead clarity-driven teams. Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the show. Jeff Linden is going to be joining us tonight, and he is bringing us a great conversation all about building a culture where failure is embraced, not feared. And I am pumped to hear all of the things that you have to share about that. But first, Jeff, tell our audience a little bit about the work that you do.
All right. I am currently a high school principal in Hastings, Nebraska. I've been my 7th year of being a principal, but this is also my second principalship where I've also as a principal at Southern Valley as well. I'm in my 18th year of education where I've been a teacher, a math teacher, a PE teacher, football coach, wrestling coach, track coach. I've done all the things, but now I'm in my 7th year of leadership and really enjoying being a school principal and just love what I do.
That's awesome. And I absolutely love to. Now, you have your own podcast as well, right?
Yep.
Okay,
I
go
do.
ahead and tell our audience about your podcast.
Yeah, I have, I started it about 3 years ago, but I really got, more committed to it, this past, Christmas timeframe. I'm in December where I have the educational leadership with Principal JL, where I bring on guests, from, not just local guests, but national, guests as well. And then I also have episodes where I kind of talk about, how I lead, some suggestions, just give you experiences because one thing I've learned as a principal, as a leader, when I go to like conferences, when I go network, I hear people's stories and I learn from them. And so I'm trying to give people a platform to help people learn and grow from that standpoint. And yet, you can't take the conferences home. You can't take those people home with you. So having a podcast, it's always there for you. So if you ever needed to learn about something and there's an episode you like to dive into, I would have you just check out, my episodes that I have. And if something interests you, just take a look at it. And, if I'm able to help you, I'll reach out and I'll definitely do my best to help people grow and learn in this leadership.
Yeah, that's awesome. The thing I love about that is that you are boots on the ground practicing right now as a principal. And that's one of the things I love about having guests on my show who come from the everyday grunt work of what they do. I use grunt work lightly. I do realize that the people who come on my show typically love what they do,
Yeah.
but it still can be challenging and hard. And you have the experiences to be able to share the realistic things that you feel like are working for your campus. So this is an honor to have you on here. So I want you to share before we dive into this topic about maybe one thing that makes you really relatable and just full on human.
Yeah, I think, I have this title of principal and people say, "Oh, you're the principal, you're the boss, you're this," but I'm also Jeff Linden, the person. So, I like to go camping, I like fishing. I have a boat, so I like to get that out. I'm kind of getting excited because, in a couple of weeks here, I'm gonna pull it out and get it ready. And by Memorial Weekend, we're gonna be hitting the water and doing those things. So, yeah, I like to do things and have fun. In my past life before becoming an educator, when I was, going through undergrad, I was a DJ, so I've done some of the stuff like that. So yeah, so I have a lot of hidden talents
Yeah,
that
you do.
when they get to know me, those things will come out. And I'm pretty outgoing. I like to talk to people. Some people may say too much, but at the same time, that's just who I am. But sometimes I forget that I'm a principal, and I have to sometimes remind myself, yeah, you are a principal, and people do look at you a certain way. But that's where the whole, I don't want people to fear me. I want people to know who I am so they get to know me, and we can have a relationship, and then I'm there for them when they need me. And so,
Yeah.
that's kind of one of those things. People just, they get all nervous around you just because of what position you hold. And I try to break down that barrier a little bit. I understand my role, but
Hmm.
yet I come at it a little bit differently than some people may.
Yeah. So funny. So we've got fisherman and DJ. That's like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, no, that was just something I did for fun, and made some extra cash while I was trying to get through undergrad.
Yeah, that's great. Man, what a great story for your kids, for the people that you meet. That's just so unique. Not a lot of people get to say things like, "Oh, yeah, I was a DJ."
Yep.
So that's awesome. I love that. Now, tonight we are talking about, and this is so relatable to what you just mentioned about how people kind of experience you and relate to you. But we're talking about building a culture where failure is embraced, not feared. And I'm really excited to hear some things that you have to share because I know that this is something that a lot of leaders, I don't want to say struggle with, but it is present on campuses. And I think part of that is just our systematic way of how we grew up, or even a systematic way of how we've been launched into our careers with this positional leadership mindset. And so there comes sometimes just that innate fear that's been, um, I guess, put into us through our practices and the things that we hear and all of that. So I think it's hard to combat that sometimes. So it'll be great to hear the things you have to say. So I want to ask you first, what inspired your commitment to building a school culture where failure isn't feared but instead it's accepted and embraced?
I think, when you're talking about just building a school culture, I think I go back to my coaching roots. I think, going back to my experiences growing up in Lexington, Nebraska, we had a great culture when it came to just athletics and the things that we did. We were very successful, but there was a mindset we had. There was, traditions we had, and we had a culture, back then that was all about, working hard, being the best you can. Um, doing it for the guy next to you, doing it for the guy across for you. And so I think having that collaborative approach, and that's kind of way I was as a coach too. Like, hey, we're a team, we're going to work together, because you're not going to be successful if you can't collaborate and work together. Because like even when I was coaching football, I was 11-man football. All 11 guys have a job. You all got to execute that job, and if one person doesn't, it blows up the play. So that's kind of the mindset that I have just as who I am. And so I
Mhm.
had to figure out how could I relate that into my role as a principal, as a leader. And so for me, it was just, my experience as a teacher, um, if the principal came and saw me my first 5 years, I got a little nervous because it was like, oh, what happened now? Who's complaining? Because at the time I was a head football coach, I was a math teacher, and it seemed like every time my principal would come in, it was somebody was complaining about something, or there was something that I did wrong, I needed to fix, and so I always was a little leery when they came in. If I didn't see them, it was a good sign. And so it wasn't
Yeah.
until I moved on to Hershey, Nebraska, where I was under Mike Troxel as a principal, and he basically just showed up and out of the blue, and I'm like, "What's this guy want?" Is what I'm thinking, because I'm like, I go, "Hey, is everything okay? Is there something wrong?" He's like, "Nah, I'm just here to hang out and watch you do your thing." And I'm like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, just keep teaching. I'm just watching." And so that's where I went, "This is different." And so and this guy wasn't, he was towards the end of his principalship, and he was leading by just going in and building that relationship, and I just got to watch him over that 3 years, while I was at that school. And then, another principal, Brian Bagley at Millard North, he's one of those principles that, yeah, you could see him. Just to give you an example between Hershey and Miller. Hershey, Nebraska, rural school, about 600 people in the community, right? K 12, our school, K 12 is about the same population as the community.
Yeah.
We also had people, opt in. So I go to Miller North in Omaha, Nebraska, where it's the biggest high school in the state of Nebraska at the time, with 2,500 students. You have one building principal, you have four assistant principals. There was 22 math teachers in my department alone in Miller North High School, and so I got to watch him, even though it was for a year, kind of how he led. And he actually was approachable. He was someone you can go talk to. He was someone that led in a way that, hey, if you communicated with him, he was going to take care of you. And he was doing that at a big scale. And
Mm.
my biggest thing is the culture that he encouraged at that school. We're the best. We're always, that mindset of we're the best, we will achieve, and we're going to be successful, and having that mindset really from him all the way down, you can see it throughout the building. And so those are just a couple examples of where I go, man, that's what I want to do someday. I want to be that type of building principal. It came to, how am I going to do it? How do I do it with my personality and who I am? And I think that's important too, because you want to be authentic. You don't want to be, a fake person. You don't want to be just doing it to say it. You actually want to mean it, and you also want to be, who you are, because people will. But you can't fake it in this business. You got to be who you are, and you got to do what you, you got to build those relationships up, and if you don't do those things, you'll struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like what you are have held on to is the importance of being authentic. Like you can't really replicate someone else's personality, but you can hone the habits that you have noticed that they've implemented as a leader. And then the other thing that stood out as you were talking was just being present in classrooms. That is probably the number one thing that creates a barrier between our teachers and our leaders and creates that culture of fear versus failure embraced is when they're not present. Because then when they are present in the classrooms, it's, oh my gosh, why are they in my classroom? What did I do wrong? All of the things that you mentioned. So I think that leads perfectly into the next question. How do you help staff and students reframe failure as a necessary part of the learning process? Because inevitably, especially if we're thinking about a principal being in a classroom, or even like I've been an instructional specialist before in classrooms and observing for short periods of time, and inevitably something will go not the way it was planned. And I think the gut reaction for teachers often is to apologize for it.
Yeah.
So how do you go about reframing that?
Yeah, I think, one of the things I did when I came into this position at Hastings is I call it my 60, 90, 30-day transition plan, where really my goal was to build relationships with staff members and get someone on to one time. I think the first thing I had to do was them get to know me, I get to know them, because I was coming into a situation where, let's just say, the experiences with the current or the last person wasn't as positive as it could be. But it comes down to, my goal was, I am not that person. I am who I am. And I want to build this relationship. I want to get to know you, not just professionally, but maybe get to know some of your likes, your dislikes. With this building, there's about 120 staff total on top of my custodial staff and everything else. So there's a lot of people to get to know, a lot of names to remember. So I really dedicated space to do that. I know every staff member's name. I know something about them, and they know something about me, to where when we are in the passing in the hallways or something, I can go, "Hey, how's this going? Hey, how's your mom?" Or "How's this?" I try to do those things just because I want them to know that I see them more than just being a teacher, just more than being a coach. I want to see them as a person as well. Yes, your role is to be this position, but yet I had to build that relationship so we can break those barriers down. Once the barriers are broken down, then you can start talking about changing a mindset, because they ain't gonna follow you if you don't have the relationship or the trust, built up first. And so that's really where I focus on first, was building those relationships in order to collaborate, in order to break down the mindset of, failure is okay. I think, when it comes back to it, when we talk about, failure, there's a lot of things in life that you're going to fail at. You learn by failure no matter what you do in life. You can think about just the driving test, right? How many times do you get to take the driving test? You can take it quite a few times, right? Until you
Right.
pass it. Like for me, when I became a teacher, I got to take the praxis test. You know what? I took the English praxis test 3 times. And every time when I failed, I had to learn from it. I had to figure out what did I need to do so I could pass it. It's so, failure is just a part of life. And we have to understand that our students are going to fail, but it comes down to, how do you respond to that failure? How do you look at it? Do you look at it as an opportunity for growth? Do you look at it for an opportunity to learn? Because I always say, when you fail, you learn, grow, and go, and not to be afraid of it. I tell my staff, like, you want to try a new teaching strategy? And it may not work. You may fall flat on your face, but guess what? You're gonna learn from it. You're gonna figure it out. Because I don't want you to be afraid to try something new, because of that fear. I wanna take away that fear and say, "Go do that. Go try something that you always wanted to try," and not be afraid of those things. And that's kinda what I do as a leader, is I try to lead by, just by modeling, not being afraid to try new things. And really, when I build that trust and trust in my people, when I collaborate and delegate, that's another piece, because, as leaders, sometimes we think we gotta, micromanage everything. You ain't gonna be very successful when you do that. So you got to be able to build trust and be able to delegate, collaborate. So, you can be okay with failure. If it fails, we'll have to learn from it. We'll figure it out. We'll get to that later. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of things in life that we learn through failure, and that's kind of what I want to bring to my staff, but also for our students as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories that I share sometimes when I'm like presenting or talking to leaders is I had a leader once who I adored her. She was the epitome of leading with dignity and grace, but also held people accountable to really high standards. But she intentionally would use the phrase, "Well, that was a flop," whenever she like something didn't go right for her. And she used it fairly consistently, so much so that even students on the campus were like, well, that was a flop. And it was like, you pick yourself up and you move along. What did we learn from it? So I think that's so incredibly valuable and important for our people to see. And I don't know that we show it enough. I don't know that as leaders we're vulnerable enough,
Mhm.
because we have this mindset that we have to be at a certain level as a human being in order to lead well. Almost like keeping up this facade, but really
Yeah.
want to break the facade down.
Well, Casey, I think you mentioned something there that's really important. You said vulnerability, right? As a leader, you got to basically say, if you screw up, you got to own it. You got to be able to say, you know what? That wasn't probably the best, the best thing that happened, or I failed at that and I'm sorry. And it can be as simple as a communication. I'll tell staff that, like, if I didn't communicate very well, I'll tell them I'm sorry I didn't communicate very well, and I'll make it better next time. But at the same time, what can I do to help with the situation and move that on? Well, all they're doing is you're taking ownership, you're showing accountability, but yet you're being vulnerable, and you're not saying that I'm here and you're there. You're saying, hey, I screw up too, so let's just let's just
Yeah.
chalk it up as a learning experience, move on, and but at the same time we learn from it, we grow from it. And so I
Yeah.
think that vulnerability is really key as well.
You think you can come and teach my 17-year-old how to take ownership?
I
No,
try.
probably not. No.
I, I,
Oh man.
try to teach my
Okay.
10-year-old that right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's tough. It's a learned experience. Like you have to learn from all of your experiences and grow in that way.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more logistically. What are some structures or routines that you feel like have helped your teams to move from kind of being reactive to solutions focused? Because when we fail,
Mhm.
we do think of it as a problem. So how do we make it more solutions focused?
Yeah, I think one of the things we do, and I'll talk about a couple things. Every day, at the beginning of the school day, we have our little daily announcement, and they do our little daily announcement, and at the end of it, our mantra is be 1% better. Okay, that's something that I've talked about the last 2 years. We're in our second year of it. Be 1%. What are you going to do to be 1% better today? And then we end it with Go Tigers. So that is something that is said every day, and it gets got to the point to where the kids say, "Mr. Lee, you getting 1% better today." Hey, I'll say, "How are you getting 1% better?" Or, it's a something that's a mantra. It's something that we say. It's a mindset now. So where my first year it wasn't there. Now, with that said, understanding we're looking to learn, grow, and go every day. What are you going to do to get better? Yeah, you're going to have failures, and how do you learn from that? But I think for us, it's collaboration through our school improvement team. So my first year here at Hastings High, I basically invited every teacher. If they wanted to be a part of the team, they could be. You did not have to be. Now, my goal was to try to get one person per department. With that, if I didn't have somebody that was representing a department, I actually went and recruited them. And so now I have at least one representative from every department in the school building, and our goal was, and through that, my first 60, 90, 30 day, like my first year, a part of that plan was to try to listen. Like, what are some themes that keep recurring that I hear the teachers say, this is a problem. This is something we need to fix. This is something that we need to figure out. And so a part of that in that first year, we figured out electronic devices was a common theme that kept coming up. Kids wander in the halls was a common theme that kept coming up. Getting kids in class, and absenteeism, and chronic absence. Those are all things, like, these are all issues, but we couldn't tackle it all at once, right? And so we brought this team together. We started meeting, and we said, "Hey, let's start with our personal devices." And so we look at other people, see how they're doing. But what we did is we took things that we liked, but we wanted to make it work for us. How does it work for our school? How does it work for our what kind of culture do we want to set? And so the school improvement team were able to collaborate around that, and we were able to figure out a new cell phone or personal electronic device policy, as well as a e-hall pass system that we figured out, to where we went away from paper passes to electronic passes. And then the staff, because we really believe in this so much, we want an extra duty added. And I looked at him like, you really want this extra duty, which is our hall monitor duty? And they're like, yeah, we need to make sure we get these kids out of the hallways into the classroom so they're learning. Well, last year was the first year we launched it. And if you would have been year one to year two and you see the hallways, they would say it's night and day difference. There's more kids in the classroom. They were more attentive to the learning. And all because we decided as a team, this is what we wanted to be firm on. This is what we want to believe in. And then we took it to the staff. They gave us feedback. So it was one of those things. There's back and forth on the feedback. And then I had my staff, my school improvement team, present this to the whole staff at the end of the first year. to say this is how we're moving forward. We're all going to get on this together. So said,
Hello.
with that said, yeah, that's my daughter.
Do you need to
Uh,
answer it? We can answer it and have a conversation.
yeah, yeah, bring her. Uh, so with that said, you know, we said these are things we want to get tight on. And so for me, it helps with, hey, we all decided this together. And so we're all going to be in this together. We're going to work this together. And I can basically use that as an accountability piece, not to play, gotcha games. It's just the more like, hey, we decided as a group, this is what's important. And we need to make sure we're doing our part. And so
Yeah.
that's another, when you do those things, that helps find the solutions that are, basically what they say are problems. And once you do that and you collaborate and you go through that process and then you're successful with it, well, then you do it again and you're successful again. And then this year we added the attendance piece where we have a multi-tier attendance process to where that was all through our school improvement team as well. And then for next year, we're working on a freshman only day because we learned that we want to make sure we transition our freshmen into our high school a lot better. And so we're creating what that's going to look like. So we're actually going to do that on Friday. So I mean, this group of people come together and work together to get these solutions to these things that come up is very powerful because then one of the things that was really powerful was when we got to the end of last year and we figured out our attendance policy and how we're going to do this system. The teacher said, you know what? At least we're trying something. If it doesn't work and it fails, because that was my biggest worry. It may not work, guys, but we're gonna try it anyway, right? And
Yeah.
they said, but at least we can say we tried. And I think
Yeah.
that was a powerful moment because they they said, we really didn't do that as much as we've done that since you've been here. And, really appreciate you taking the time to listen and helping us and finding solutions. Yeah, I'm the principal. I kind of lead it, but yet they do the work and I kind of just help guide it. And I think
Yeah.
that's the best part is where, we're all in this together. We can't do it ourselves. And a building my size, there's no way I'm doing everything myself anyway. So having
Right.
systems and things in place is really important.
Yes. Okay. Speaking of systems, and I just have to plug it here because it makes perfect sense. If you have a school improvement team, or actually, let me back up. If, listener, you don't have a school improvement team, but you want to create one, or you have one, but you're like, it's really not functioning in the way that Jeff just mentioned, then I'm telling you the Craft of Clarity book, my book that just came out in February, tells you about the clarity cycle framework. It is a system for doing exactly what Jeff just mentioned. So if you want to figure out what does our area of focus need to be and how can we take steps to approach that area of focus and reach some goals that we set, definitely reach out to me or grab the book because it's going to tell you exactly how to do that and in a very collaborative way, just like Jeff just mentioned. And it's so impactful what you're saying about how your staff took ownership of the problem and the solution and collectively work together to implement the solution. And so that you said it already. It's so powerful and exciting to hear. Here's what's interesting that I didn't know about you is you have a military background.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. So I want to know a little bit more about that and how it shaped your approach to leadership in schools.
Yeah, before I became a principal or a football coach, I was in the Army Reserve for 8 years. Part of that, I was a non-commissioned officer, so a sergeant E5, and so I went through some leadership. So my first, you know, just leadership course was a leadership course that I took through the military, how to become a good sergeant, how to become a good NCO, and things like that, and learn through that process. And a lot of those things make sense because it kind of helped me as a coach and things like that as well down the road. Now, in the military, a lot of things is very hierarchy. You have the top, you have everything down, right? So it's a lot of top down method, a lot of uh, you know orders and do what I say. But there's people don't realize there is a collaborative piece to it. So there are people working together, and so what really shaped my mindset for leadership in the military is not just going through those leadership trainings that I did, um, but was being an actual enlisted soldier. So, as a person, you do the work. You're a private. You go into specialist mode, and then you work your way up. I have found in my military career the best leaders were the ones that started from the bottom and did what you call the grunt work. They did the grunt work, they did those things, they understood what it meant to be down doing the hard stuff. So when they became leaders, they knew they could empathize, they could understand what it's like to be there because they were there. In the military, sometimes you're going to get commanders that are coming straight out of college. They went to ROTC. They don't have a background when it comes down to being that junior enlisted soldier. So when they come in, they just think they know what they're doing. They don't really understand really what it takes because they didn't go through the grind. They didn't go from the bottom to the top. And so I felt like that was really important for me before I became a principal was to spend a significant amount of time in the classroom. Now, becoming a principal was not a goal of mine. I was not setting out to become a principal. I actually was setting out to be a teacher and a football coach and a
Mm.
coach to whatever. Like I was perfectly happy teaching and coaching the rest of my life. But it wasn't until my wife's grandpa got a hold of me through some conversations and felt like, you know what, you need to go into leadership. You need to do these things. You just have it. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I kind of laughed it off. But then when I decided to go back to get a master's, that's when I got into educational leadership. Okay, get it that down. I go, well, if I'm going to be a principal someday, I think it's really good to have some curriculum instruction background. So I ended up getting that. So I just hang on to those degrees until I became a principal. But mainly it was just I felt like I needed 10 years in the classroom. I spent 11 years in the classroom. And what that does for me is I could speak to the struggles my staff is going through. I know because I've been there.
Yep.
I know what it's like to be in the classroom for 11 years and go through the struggles, the ups and downs, the seesawing, struggling and dealing with parents and all those things. I get it. That I could speak to those things, but yet they know I've been there, and I wasn't a short-term teacher before a principal. So having those experiences were really important to me because I saw that in the military. The best leaders were the ones that worked their ways from the bottom to the top, and that's what I wanted to do. So that's kind of my mindset with when you talk about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So there's a book that I think you would really enjoy if you haven't already read it. And I don't have it nearby, but it's called Team of Teams, I think is the name of it. And it's by General Stanley McChrystal, I think. But something that you mentioned earlier in this episode reminded me of it. And it's just kind of seeing your organization functioning as a team of multiple teams. So we are all part of one large team, but we have all of these teams inside that really are being led by multiple different leaders. So yes, absolutely having that groundwork and being able to empathize in the position that you're in now is so important. But I think you can speak also to how you've developed the people on your campus to become not fear-based leaders, but 360-degree leaders who want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. And
Yeah.
so I'm sure your military background helped with that as well.
Mhm. It also
Yeah.
helps with crisis management. So,
Oh, for
you know,
sure. Yeah.
dealing with some of the things I deal with as a principal and those things like that. I mean, I have, my military background does help me, in a way that, when things hit the fan,
Yeah.
I can really step back and really disassociate myself. It sounds bad, but I could disassociate myself from what's going on and figure out, okay, this is what we got to do, and I can react and do the things I need to do because of that background too.
Mhm.
I don't get panicked. I don't get yeah, I'm gonna get elevated, but I learned how to control that just through my military background, and then when I have to deal with things, I just know and react and do the things that need to be done in this position because there's times you just got to do what you got to do,
Yeah.
just to keep the building safe and the people safe as well. So
Yeah, keep it all running. What advice would you give to leaders who are trying to shift mindsets around failure, but they're hitting some resistance with it?
Yeah, I think that all goes back to building your relationships. I mean,
Mhm.
when you have resistance, it's probably because you're not very clear. That could be part of it. Having clarity, being able to tell people the why, I think is
Mhm.
really important. And I was really important to me as a coach when I coached my athletes. I can explain to them, we're doing this drill because of this. We're doing this play because of, how it, mimics this play, but we're doing something totally different. So when you tell people the why, we're doing this because of this and have clarity, I think that helps. I think when you have resistance is because they don't understand or they're not getting it or it's not very clear to them. And so you might
Mhm.
have to be more clear or be able to clarify whatever that is for that staff member. But when it comes to just failure, we all learn from failure. And it's something I talk to my staff about all the time. It's something that, it's not just something we say, but we try to embrace it. If we fail at some, we go, "It's okay if we fail. How do you learn from it? How do you grow from it?" Always makes me go back to the productive struggle teaching methods, right?
Yeah.
Our kids, we're gonna set them up to where we know they're gonna struggle, and we tell them, "You're gonna struggle, and it's okay." But it's the process that's important. It's what you learn through the process that's important. I think it's the same thing as a leader. Hey, we may fail at this, but it's okay. It's the process we're trying. It's the whole thing with our attendance policy. It's the process that we're trying this year, and we're gonna see if it works. We don't know how it's gonna work. I will tell you it's working well because I have the numbers, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
process is important and understanding, you know we got committed to something and we wanna do this, and if we fail, it's okay. Understanding it's okay to fail at things because that's how you learn and grow. I think that's something I keep saying over and over, but I just think it's really important to know and to embrace and to let other people know and to model those things. Because when I fail, I'll let them know, "Yeah, I screwed up today. I learned from it, and we're gonna move on." So I think that's another important piece as well.
Yeah, you used a word that I love in there, and that word is clarity. There has to be clarity in order for people to get on board and commit. Um, how do you feel like this has led to better collaboration among your teams?
I think, like I talked about earlier, we're not afraid to fail. If we
Mhm.
see a problem, we try to find a solution, and we understand the solution may not work, but at least we know we're trying. And I think that all comes back to, building relationships and people understand where we're at, but also, trusting each other. With that, they trust my leadership enough to, go along on these crazy ideas that we have sometimes when we come to, what we're trying to do, but they see the practicality of they see the reasons why. They have clarity for what we're trying to do. And when you bring those things all together, I think that really helps build those systems and those processes that you need to have to be successful. And it all comes back to building relationships and collaborating, but also delegating and understanding that you have other people that can help you out. You don't have to do it all. My job is to make sure all the systems are in check, they're all working, and all the people that are kind of running those systems are in good shape. They have the support they need, so our building runs smoothly. And I think that's really important to understand as well.
Yeah. Let's say that leaders want to walk away from this episode, and tomorrow or next week, they want to make a small change so that their teams can see failure differently. What would be an actionable step?
I think it comes down to what you can do personally is, how do you model that? How do you as a leader model that? I think that's really important because if they see you embracing failure, they'll embrace it later, right? Even
Yeah.
though they may, "What's this guy doing here?" But it's one of those things, like I talked about earlier. If I don't do something well and someone calls me out on it, I'll be like, "Yeah, okay, I see your point. I'm sorry that that happened. And if I wasn't clear, or, you this was a misunderstanding, I'll apologize. That's fine. I'm not above that." But, if I fail at something, I can own it. I can recognize it, but yet we can also learn from it and then find a solution and move forward. And my staff knows that. They know that about me to where they can come to me and, you know, give me their grievances and we'll try to find a solution. But yet, if there was a miscommunication and it was something that I said, I'll own it. I think modeling that you're okay with failure is a good first actionable step to help people understand that it is okay to not, you know, always be on, not always have the right answer. But if you don't have the right answer, you can always say, "Hey, let me think about it. I'll get back to you too." You
Hmm.
don't want to just try to solve a solution fast. You want to try to maybe take a step back and look at everything and how it affects. I think that's another piece as a principal I have to do is I can't solve a problem as fast as they want me to sometimes because I shouldn't have to solve the problems all the time, but when they ask for help, I will help them. But it just comes back. Sometimes you have to step back and see everything before you give them a response, and they know that. And I think when you do make a mistake, owning it is a first step to help people understand that failure is okay and to embrace it.
Yeah, you are talking about clarity in communication, but also clarity in action. And I love it so much. Okay, Jeff, let's talk about where people can find you after they've listened to this episode.
Oh yeah, they could find me on Facebook, Principal JL. You can find me on TikTok. I have those. I do
Okay.
YouTube Shorts, so I have my YouTube Shorts. They go out. So I have my podcast. You can find me on any major podcast platform. Educational Leadership with Principal JL. You know, you have any platform you can find me on it. Uh, but through like my other things, I will post you know, snippets of my episodes, inviting people to listen and things like that. And I also will, try to promote other people's stuff as we work together collaboratively. So there's a lot of different places you can find me, but you find Principal JL on all those different platforms. You'll probably run into me eventually.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your great knowledge and experience about building a culture where failure is embraced, not feared. Thanks, Jeff. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Casey.
Okay, guys, if you are looking for practical strategies to strengthen collaboration in your school or organization, then you're going to love the podcast Building a Culture of Collaboration with Curtis and Lorna Hewson. Each episode features insightful conversations with education leaders exploring real world approaches to teamwork, leadership, and building a thriving culture. Whether you're a teacher, administrator, or leadership enthusiast, you'll walk away with ideas you can use right away. Hey there, thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends who want to learn how to lead clarity-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.